Silent attractiveness is not about being the loudest person in the room. It's about becoming the person others quietly notice, respect, and remember long after the moment has passed. In a world obsessed with attention, visibility, and performance, the rare individuals who don't chase approval often end up commanding the most of it. Their confidence feels different. Their aura feels different. Their presence feels earned, not demanded. At the core of silent attractiveness is social intelligence, the ability to understand people, calibrate behavior, and navigate social dynamics without force or desperation. It isn't vanity, manipulation, or charm tricks. It is behavioral maturity. It is learning to be compelling without begging, interesting without oversharing, and confident without announcing it. People may not always know why they are drawn to these individuals, but they feel it instinctively. In this audiobook, we will explore how silent attractiveness works, why it matters now more than ever, and how anyone, regardless of personality, background, or appearance, can become magnetic through presence, restraint, timing, boundaries, competence, and emotional poise. You will learn how to shift from seeking attention to attracting it, from talking to communicating, from performing to becoming. You will learn how to position yourself so that respect comes naturally, curiosity comes easily, and relationships become richer and more reciprocal. We are not here to play social games. We are here to evolve into someone worth paying attention to. Someone others admire, not for noise but for substance. Silent attractiveness is not a trick, it's an identity. And once built, it follows you into rooms, conversations, opportunities, and relationships of every kind. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Command respect without speaking. Respect is rarely given to the loudest voice. It's given to the person who doesn't need to demand it. The person who doesn't need to prove anything. The person whose presence communicates confidence before they ever open their mouth. That is the foundation of commanding respect without speaking. And it begins long before you enter a room or begin a conversation. It begins in how you carry yourself, how comfortable you are in your own skin, and how little you need from others in order to feel solid. People read social cues constantly, even when they don't realize they're doing it. They read posture, eye contact, facial expressions, reaction speed, tone, pace, stillness, and even silence. These signals tell them everything they need to know about who you are and what you believe about yourself. When you walk into a space with calmness, with collected energy, with no rush to be seen or validated, people feel it. When you are grounded, composed, and unbothered, others instinctively place you higher on the social hierarchy. Not because you won anything, but because you didn't try. There is a subtle hierarchy in every social setting. Someone sets the tone, someone reacts to the tone, and everyone else adjusts somewhere in between. The one who commands respect silently is usually the one who sets the tone. They don't match the energy of the room. They let the room match their energy. That's influence. That's soft power. And soft power is far more attractive than aggressive dominance or the need to control. Commanding respect without speaking also requires comfort with silence. Silence is a powerful social tool. It creates space. It creates tension. It creates presence. When you don't rush to fill silence, you communicate that you are not uncomfortable with yourself. You're not waiting for approval. You're not afraid of being judged. Most people run from silence because they are afraid of how they will be perceived. But those who are comfortable in silence are perceived as more confident, more intelligent, and more composed. There's another layer to silent respect. Pace. People who move too quickly signal anxiety, insecurity, or desperation. People who speak too quickly signal a need to convince or impress. But those who slow down just slightly signal certainty, certainty in themselves, certainty in their message, certainty in their place in the world. And people respect certainty. It creates psychological safety. When someone is certain, you can relax around them. When someone is frantic, you feel the need to adjust yourself to make them comfortable. And here's something important. Silent respect is never about arrogance. It's not about being better than others or pretending to be untouchable. It's about being rooted in self-worth, rooted in standards, rooted in internal stability. When that stability is present, you don't have to force respect, because people recognize value on their own. Respect that has to be forced never lasts. Respect that is earned without force lasts far longer. To command respect without speaking, you must also detach from the outcome of social interactions. When you don't need everyone to like you, when you don't need to impress, when you don't need validation, you instantly become more attractive. Why? Because scarcity creates value. When your attention, your approval, and your energy are not freely available to everyone, they become valuable. People pay attention to what is valuable. People respect what is valuable. And people chase what is valuable. Silent respect is ultimately about one thing: self-respect first. If you won't lower yourself to earn approval, people raise their level to match yours. If you won't chase, people come to you. If you won't perform, people pay attention anyway. It's a paradox, but in social dynamics, the person who seeks the least approval often receives the most of it. And once you understand that, your entire approach to people begins to change. Chapter 2. Develop emotional gravity that pulls people in. Some people enter a room and instantly draw attention, not because of beauty, clothing, or status, but because of a subtle weight in their presence. They feel grounded, they feel composed, they feel unshakable. That invisible weight is what we call emotional gravity, and emotional gravity is one of the most quietly attractive qualities a person can possess. Emotional gravity is not loud. It doesn't perform. It doesn't beg for responses. It doesn't chase reactions. Instead, it pulls people in by offering a sense of calmness, safety, and psychological stability. When someone with emotional gravity speaks, others lean in. When they pause, others wait. When they process, others respect their silence. There is no rush, no frantic need for validation. No insecurity disguised as charm, just grounded confidence. The opposite of emotional gravity is emotional volatility. The person who reacts too quickly, who takes things too personally, who changes energy based on external opinions, who becomes anxious the moment silence appears, who interprets every social cue as a threat or a test. Volatile energy creates pressure. It forces others to regulate their own behavior, tiptoe, or adjust to make the volatile person comfortable. And when someone drains emotional bandwidth, they stop being attractive. People may tolerate them, but they do not crave them. Emotional gravity, on the other hand, gives more than it takes. It stabilizes the room. It signals maturity. It creates comfort. And comfort, true comfort, draws people closer than any performance ever could. The most attractive social energy is the energy that allows others to relax into themselves rather than tighten into performance. To build emotional gravity, you must first establish emotional neutrality. Emotional neutrality is the ability to experience something without immediately reacting to it. It means you don't jump at every comment, you don't defend yourself against every opinion, and you don't assume everything is about you. The person with emotional gravity is selective with their reactions, not passive, selective. They choose when a response is worth offering. The second component of emotional gravity is emotional certainty. Certainty does not mean stubbornness. It means you are solid in who you are, solid in your values, solid in your standards, solid in your decisions. Certainty creates trust. People trust those who know where they stand. They follow those who are not constantly looking around to check if they are making the right social move. The third component is emotional patience, the willingness to let situations unfold without rushing to control them. Attractive people do not panic in uncertainty. They don't rush for closure, for answers, or for reassurance. They allow space. They allow others to reveal themselves. They allow silence to do part of the work. And space is powerful. Space makes people think. Space makes people curious. Space makes people feel seen. There's another dimension here, energy sending versus energy receiving. People with low emotional gravity send out frantic energy, trying to be liked, trying to entertain, trying to fill silence, trying to keep attention. People with emotional gravity receive energy first. They observe, they feel the environment, they calibrate. Their presence says, I'm here, I'm listening, I'm not rushing, and I'm not desperate for you to validate me. That dynamic alone creates attraction. To develop emotional gravity, practice slowing down your movements, your speech, your reactions. Notice how highly reactive people rush to speak. Notice how they step over others' sentences. Notice how they jump to fill empty space. And notice how exhausting that energy feels over time. Calmness, in contrast, makes people feel safe in your presence, and safety is dangerously attractive, not in a childish way, but in a mature, magnetic way. There's also a micro-level social mechanic at work. When you remain calm in a socially or emotionally charged moment, people subconsciously assign you leadership. They do it without verbal acknowledgement. They do it because calmness equals control, and control equals strength. We are biologically wired to trust those who remain composed under pressure. In stressful moments, people gravitate toward the calm one, not the loud one. One more point about emotional gravity: it removes the need for performance. The person who feels calm within themselves never needs to impress. They simply are. And when you are enough without performance, people feel the difference. Performance energy may amuse people, but gravity energy makes them respect you, wonder about you, think about you, and want to be around you. Respect lasts longer than amusement. Curiosity lasts longer than entertainment. To build emotional gravity in the real world, you can start with small habits. Pause before answering questions. Breathe before reacting to tension. Observe before contributing to discussion. Hold eye contact without rushing to break it. Allow silence to exist without apology, and do not narrate your emotions or insecurities out loud. The less you externally dramatize your internal world, the more grounded you appear. Emotional gravity is ultimately about emotional independence. When you are not dependent on others for validation, attention, or reassurance, your energy becomes heavy in a good way, weighted, anchored, rooted. And anchored energy is rare in a world full of emotional turbulence. That rarity is exactly why people find it so attractive. Chapter 3. Build self-respect before seeking respect. It is impossible to be silently attractive if you lack self-respect. Respect always begins inward. People treat you at the level you treat yourself. When you tolerate disrespect, others will learn that they can disrespect you. When you chase validation, others will learn that they can withhold it to control you. When you seek approval, others will learn that your standards are negotiable. Silent attractiveness collapses instantly if you are willing to exchange your dignity for attention. Self-respect is not attitude, arrogance, or loud boundary setting. It is not about announcing your standards to the world or demanding that others recognize your worth. Self-respect is internal. It shows up in your decisions, in your habits, in your tolerances, and in the way you respond to mistreatment. When you respect yourself, you don't need to prove anything to anyone. You don't need applause. You don't need to announce your values. Your life quietly reflects them. The reason self-respect is such a powerful, attractive force is simple. People instinctively trust those who do not sell themselves short. When you hold your own standards, when you don't shrink for others, when you don't bargain for attention, you signal that you are a person of value, and value attracts, not just romantically, but socially, professionally, and relationally. People gravitate toward those who don't betray themselves for acceptance. To build self-respect, you must first understand where people lose it. Most self-respect is lost through small acts of self-abandonment, agreeing when you want to disagree, apologizing for things you didn't do, saying yes when you mean no, staying where you're not valued, downplaying your needs, and putting other people's comfort above your dignity. These behaviors seem harmless in the moment, but they accumulate. Each time you betray yourself, you quietly signal to your own mind that your standards are optional. And here's the key: you cannot command respect from others if you do not enforce it on yourself. People take cues from your behavior long before they listen to your words. You can say you have standards, but if you break them for attention or affection, others won't believe them. Standards are not declared, they are enforced. Boundaries are not explained, they are upheld. Self-respect is not something you ask for, it's something you embody. Self-respect also transforms the way you communicate. People who lack self-respect chase clarity, reassurance, and closure. They over-explain, they seek permission, they apologize excessively. But people with self-respect communicate concisely and without panic. They don't rush to fill space. They don't over-justify decisions. They don't feel the need to convince. Their lack of neediness creates strength, and strength creates attraction. Another dimension of self-respect is the ability to walk away. The power to exit a situation you're not valued in is one of the strongest forms of silent attraction. Walking away communicates standards without confrontation. It says, "I do not beg for what should be given freely." Scarcity is attractive, but self-imposed scarcity is magnetic. If you will not abandon yourself for attention, others must rise to meet you. But self-respect is not only social, it is also behavioral. It shows up in how you treat your body, in how you manage time, in how you pursue goals, and in how you show up for commitments. If you consistently break promises to yourself, skipping priorities, indulging in procrastination, ignoring health, abandoning goals, you silently communicate that your own word carries no weight. And if your word doesn't even matter to you, why would it matter to anyone else? This is why discipline is a form of self-respect. Not harsh discipline, not self-punishment, but the simple practice of treating your time, your energy, and your growth as worthy of protection. When you treat your life as valuable, other people will instinctively treat it as valuable. When you elevate your standards, your environment begins to elevate with you. Silent attraction is simply the byproduct. Self-respect also rewires neediness. People with self-respect do not fear being alone, because they don't abandon themselves for connection. They don't beg to be chosen, because they choose themselves. They don't chase admiration, because they admire their own efforts. This internal security makes them incredibly attractive. There is nothing more compelling than someone who wants you, but doesn't need you. The path to self-respect is not grand or dramatic. It is built through small acts of self-alignment. Saying no when you mean no, leaving when you are not valued, speaking honestly without hedging, following through on personal commitments, not shrinking to fit, not selling yourself cheaply, not chasing those who dismiss you. Over time, these behaviors create a quiet strength, a silent gravity, a presence that does not need permission to exist. Before you seek to be respected by others, make sure you are not disrespecting yourself. If you want a room to value you, you must value yourself first. If you want people to treat you carefully, you must treat your life carefully. Self-respect is not something you claim, it is something you prove to yourself first, and to the world as a consequence. This is the foundation of silent attractiveness. Without it, nothing else holds. Chapter 4. Remove neediness from your identity. Neediness is the fastest way to kill silent attractiveness, because neediness announces itself before you ever say a word. It shows up in your posture, your tone, your urgency, your texting habits, your reactions to silence, and your willingness to rearrange yourself for approval. Neediness tells the world, your validation is more important than my dignity, and nothing is less attractive than that. People may entertain neediness, they may exploit it, they may pity it, but they never respect it. To remove neediness from your identity, you must first understand what it really is. Neediness isn't desire. Wanting connection, attention or companionship is normal and human. Neediness is when desire turns into dependence. It's when your emotional state becomes tied to how others respond, how much they respond, and whether they respond at all. Neediness is external control over internal peace. It says, I cannot feel okay unless you approve, respond or choose me. That is not attraction, that is surrendering your power. Neediness operates in two primary forms, overt and covert. Overt neediness is obvious, chasing, begging, pleasing excessively, apologizing for existing, or constantly seeking reassurance. Covert neediness is quieter, but just as damaging, overthinking what others meant, reading too deeply into silence, fearing conflict or customizing your personality to fit the crowd. Both forms communicate the same message. My worth is negotiable and dependent on you. The moment worth becomes negotiable, attraction collapses. Removing neediness begins with a simple but difficult shift. Your emotional center must move inward instead of outward. When you place your emotional well-being in the hands of others, you become reactive. When you keep it within yourself, you become stable. Stability is attractive. Reactivity is not. A stable person can handle silence, uncertainty, disagreement, and variability without panicking. A needy person collapses under those conditions because they need constant reassurance to stay whole. One of the biggest drivers of neediness is scarcity, specifically psychological scarcity. When you believe there are limited options for connection, friendship, career, or affection, you cling desperately to what you have. Scarcity makes you chase. Scarcity makes you perform. Scarcity makes you shrink to fit. But abundance, real or perceived, removes pressure. When you believe there are other opportunities, other people, other rooms and other paths, you don't cling, you don't beg, you don't distort yourself for crumbs. And nothing is more attractive than someone who doesn't need crumbs. Another layer is self-sourcing validation. People become needy when they outsource validation. They rely on others to tell them they are attractive, intelligent, worthy, or valuable. But those who validate themselves internally are far more attractive, because they don't require constant affirmation to function. Self-validation doesn't mean arrogance. It means you are not starving for approval. Approval from others becomes a bonus, not a requirement. When approval becomes optional, neediness loses its power. Neediness also shows up in communication patterns. The needy communicator rushes to respond, over-explains, tries to impress, tries to entertain, or seeks immediate clarity. The non-needy communicator takes their time, chooses their words, and doesn't fear pauses or delayed responses. They don't need to fix silence. They don't panic during uncertainty. They don't interpret slow responses as personal rejection. They understand that other adults have lives, priorities, and obligations, and they respect that. Respecting others' time signals that you respect your own. An essential piece of removing neediness is learning to handle rejection without emotional collapse. Rejection is not a failure, it is information. It tells you where you don't belong. It redirects you toward where you will be valued. The needy person takes rejection as proof they are unworthy. The non-needy person takes rejection as proof that compatibility didn't align. That difference in interpretation changes everything. People are drawn to those who don't crumble when things don't go their way, because it signals emotional resilience. There is also the matter of selective access. When everyone can have your time, your attention, your energy, and your presence without earning it, you become cheap. Not because you are worthless, but because you are readily available. Scarcity creates value not just in economics but in relationships. When you are selective about who you invest in, you communicate that your time has weight. Weighted time is attractive. Unlimited time is not. Being available is fine. Being desperate is not. Finally, to truly remove neediness, you must learn to enjoy your own company. People who fear solitude cling to others. People who enjoy solitude attract others. When you can take yourself out, entertain yourself, pursue goals alone, and build life without needing constant companionship, you become self-contained. Self-contained individuals are attractive because they don't pressure others to complete them. They invite others to join them, and joining is always more attractive than rescuing or completing. Once neediness leaves your identity, something remarkable happens. Respect enters, curiosity enters, interest enters, desire enters. People lean toward what doesn't need them, because what doesn't need them feels whole. And wholeness is attractive at every level, socially, romantically, professionally, and emotionally. Removing neediness isn't just about attraction, it's about power. And you cannot become silently attractive without reclaiming that power for yourself. Chapter 5. Speak less, mean more. Silent attractiveness is built not only on what you do, but on what you choose not to do. Nowhere is that more evident than in communication. Most people speak far more than necessary. They rush to fill silence. They over-explain their thoughts. They narrate every emotion, and they use words to chase validation instead of using words to convey meaning. The result is predictable. Their speech loses weight. Their words come cheap. And when words come cheap, people stop listening. To speak less and mean more is to make your speech valuable. It doesn't mean being quiet to the point of awkwardness. It doesn't mean withholding opinions entirely. It means being intentional. It means choosing quality over quantity. It means realizing that everything you say either increases the value of your voice or decreases it. A voice becomes valuable when it is not used frivolously. Think of the difference between a street performer shouting for attention and a respected leader who speaks only when necessary. One begs for ears, the other commands them. One uses noise, the other uses timing. One exhausts the audience, the other makes them lean in. Silent attractiveness favors the latter. There's a powerful social truth at play here. People assign importance to the things that require effort, cost, or scarcity. Food tastes better when it's not available every hour. Luxury items gain value when they're rare. Time becomes precious when it's limited. The same is true socially. When your words are used sparingly and purposefully, they become more valuable. People remember them, people replay them, people consider them more carefully. Another benefit of speaking less is that it gives you the advantage of observation. When you speak too quickly, too often, or too reactively, you reveal your emotional state, your insecurities, and your intentions. But when you listen first, observe second, process third, and speak last, you gain insight. Others don't. You read tone, micro-expressions, pacing, and subtext. You begin to understand people not at the surface level, but at the psychological level. And understanding people makes you socially powerful. There is also a simplicity to speaking less that conveys control. Excessive speech often signals anxiety. It signals the need to persuade, impress, or win approval. Controlled speech signals that you're not auditioning for anyone's approval. You're not selling anything. You're not afraid of silence. You're comfortable letting words sit without rushing to sugarcoat, justify, or explain them. That level of composure is magnetic because it communicates certainty, and people gravitate to certainty. When you choose to speak, do so with intention. Speak clearly, calmly, and without apology. Avoid linguistic fillers that weaken your voice. Avoid disclaimers that undercut your position. Avoid long-winded explanations that dilute your point. Learn to let a sentence land. Let people absorb it. Let silence do part of the work. Silence is not empty. Silence is emphasis. Another way to give your speech weight is by removing the need to convince. The more you try to convince people of your worth, your intelligence, your power, or your perspective, the less they believe it. Worth that must be argued rarely persuades. Worth that is demonstrated quietly persuades effortlessly. Silent attractiveness thrives on demonstration rather than declaration. Let other people reach conclusions on their own. Conclusions reached voluntarily are stronger than conclusions forced upon them. Listening is also a key component of speaking less and meaning more. Most people listen to respond. Attractive people listen to understand. They don't interrupt to insert themselves. They don't hijack stories to shift attention back to them. They don't compete for conversational dominance. They allow others to express, reveal, and open up. And the paradox is that people often find those who listen to them far more interesting than those who talk endlessly about themselves. The pace at which you speak matters as well. Speaking slowly, not artificially slow, but intentionally slow, signals confidence. When someone speaks quickly, they subconsciously communicate that they fear being cut off or dismissed. When someone speaks at a measured pace, they communicate that their voice deserves space, and space makes words heavier. There is also value in withholding opinions at times. Not every thought requires expression. Not every disagreement requires verbal correction. Not every impulse requires articulation. People who speak every thought aloud often lose social leverage because nothing about them feels curated. Attractive people choose what to reveal and what to keep. Their interiority, their inner world, is not constantly spilled outward. This creates depth, and depth creates intrigue. Finally, consider this: when you speak less, others reveal more. People fill empty space naturally. They share information, beliefs, insecurities, desires and intentions without realizing they're doing it. The less you reveal, and the more you observe, the more strategically positioned you become. Silent attractiveness is not passive. It is a form of quiet influence. Speaking less and meaning more is ultimately about adopting the mindset that your voice is valuable, your presence is valuable, and your attention is valuable. When you operate from that belief, you no longer need to flood the world with words. You let the right words do the work, and the right words, spoken at the right time, can command more respect than an hour of uninterrupted talking. Chapter 6. Reveal less and let curiosity do the work. Attraction doesn't flourish in certainty, it flourishes in curiosity. The people we find the most intriguing are rarely the ones who dump their entire life story onto us within minutes. They are the ones who reveal just enough for us to know there is more beneath the surface, but not enough for us to grasp it all at once. Curiosity is one of the strongest psychological pulls in human interaction. When you reveal less, you activate curiosity. And when curiosity is activated, people lean forward. Silence and restraint are deeply underestimated tools in social dynamics. In an age where everyone overshares, over-explains, and broadcasts every detail of their personal life, selective disclosure becomes a form of power. It signals that not everyone gets access to your inner world. It signals that your experiences are not for public consumption. It signals that your attention and your past are not cheap. And value always increases when access is limited. Oversharing, on the other hand, kills curiosity instantly. When someone learns everything too quickly, your history, your dreams, your fears, your traumas, your plans, there's nowhere left to go. There's no discovery. There's no unfolding. There's no depth. Attraction thrives on the slow reveal, the gradual layering, the steady uncovering of who someone is. When you reveal less, you allow the other person to experience that layering. You allow them to arrive at their own conclusions, and conclusions a person arrives at voluntarily are far more powerful than conclusions you try to force through explanation. Selective disclosure is not about being mysterious for the sake of mystery. It's about intentional pacing. It uses timing, context, and relevance to determine what deserves to be shared and when. The truth is, most people reveal everything instantly because they are afraid of being misunderstood. They rush to explain themselves to prevent being judged. But rushing to explain is itself a form of neediness. It's an attempt to control perception through excessive transparency. The counterintuitive result is that the more you try to control perception, the less control you actually have. To reveal less, you must become comfortable, not filling every silence, and not answering every question with exhaustive detail. If someone asks you about your past, you can offer an honest but brief response. If someone asks what you're working on, you can share a headline without the entire backstory. If someone asks about your goals, you can state direction without giving them the entire roadmap. You're not being evasive, you're calibrating access, and calibration communicates value. Here's the interesting thing about human psychology. When we don't fully understand someone, we tend to pay more attention to them. We watch more closely. We listen more carefully. We ask more questions. Our mind begins to fill in the gaps. Humans are meaning-making creatures. We dislike incomplete pictures. When you offer a partial picture, people work harder to complete it, and effort creates investment. Investment creates attraction. There is also a deeper reason why revealing less is attractive. It suggests emotional security. People who overshare often do so because they want connection quickly. They want closeness quickly. They want validation quickly. They want understanding quickly. But closeness that is built too quickly rarely lasts. Emotional security, on the other hand, takes its time. It doesn't panic. It doesn't force. It doesn't cling. It lets discovery unfold at a natural pace. That natural pace is attractive because it feels earned rather than forced. Selective disclosure also protects you. Not everyone deserves access to your vulnerabilities, your failures, your struggles, or your dreams. Some people misuse that information. Some people diminish it. Some people don't have the maturity to handle it. By revealing less, you are not only increasing curiosity, you are filtering. You are allowing only those who show interest, depth, and respect to gain further access. That is how strong relationships, romantic or otherwise, are built, through gradual mutual earning, not immediate unloading. Another aspect of revealing less is recognizing that your lifestyle speaks louder than your biography. When you demonstrate character through action, competence through your craft, discipline through your habits, values through your choices, you don't need to narrate your personality. People will understand who you are by how you operate, and people trust what they observe far more than what they are told. Words are cheap, behavior is expensive. Minimal disclosure also affects power dynamics in subtle ways. The person who reveals less often sets the conversational tempo. They create a demand for more information. They position themselves as someone worth learning about, rather than someone begging to be known. And perhaps most importantly, they do not place emotional pressure on the other person by oversharing prematurely. Ultimately, revealing less is not about hiding, it is about pacing. It is the art of unfolding. When you allow your life to be discovered rather than dumped, people stay interested longer. They lean toward you rather than away from you. They engage rather than retreat. When curiosity is alive, attraction breathes, and curiosity thrives best when you leave space for it to do its work. Chapter 7. Demonstrate value instead of advertising it. People are naturally drawn to those who demonstrate value without ever needing to announce it. Real value doesn't need a microphone. It doesn't need bragging. It doesn't need performance. It simply shows up through behavior, competence, discipline, and consistency. When someone can do something well, whether it's their career, their craft, their communication, or their conduct, people notice. And when they notice without you asking them to, the perceived value increases. Advertising value, on the other hand, often produces the opposite effect. When someone brags, self-promotes, or tries to convince others of their worth, people become skeptical. They doubt the story. They look for cracks. They assume there's exaggeration or insecurity underneath. The more someone insists I am valuable, the less valuable they appear. Silent attractiveness thrives precisely because it never tries to persuade. It allows people to reach their own conclusions. Value demonstrated is also more believable. Words can be fabricated, stories can be embellished, opinions can be manufactured, but behavior is much harder to fake. When someone shows up on time, follows through on commitments, respects their own standards, builds their skills and lives with discipline, they create a track record. That track record is a form of silent credibility. Silent credibility is attractive because it leaves no room for doubt. Think for a moment about the people you admire most. You likely admire them because of what they do, not because of what they say about themselves. We don't admire the entrepreneur who constantly brags about how much work they do. We admire the one who quietly builds, consistently delivers, and lets their results speak. We don't admire the person who claims to be kind. We admire the one who behaves with kindness without needing applause. We don't admire the person who claims confidence. We admire the one who moves through the world without needing validation for their confidence. When you demonstrate value instead of advertising it, you also bypass one of the biggest pitfalls in human interaction: social inflation. Social inflation occurs when someone talks too much about their value, their achievements, or their identity, to the point where the actual value becomes diluted. The more they talk, the less special it feels. The less they talk, the more people wonder. Wondering creates curiosity. Curiosity creates attention, and attention creates attraction. Another dimension to demonstrated value is the subtlety of competence. Competence is deeply attractive because it signals capability, reliability, and intelligence. People respect those who are good at what they do, but competence alone isn't enough. You must allow others to observe it, not through announcements, but through lived moments. The chef who quietly prepares an extraordinary meal speaks volumes without commentary. The athlete who trains consistently speaks more loudly than the one who talks about training. The person who remains calm under pressure demonstrates more strength than one who lectures about strength. Value also shows itself through lifestyle. When your habits align with the life you say you want, you become credible. When you take care of your health, manage your time well, invest in your growth, surround yourself with quality people, and uphold boundaries, you create an identity that others recognize as valuable, not because you said it, but because they saw it. Someone once said, if you truly have something to offer, you won't need to talk about it. This principle holds true socially. When you demonstrate value, people talk about you for you, they recommend you, they praise you, they remember you, they become advocates. There is a reason word-of-mouth influence is more powerful than self-promotion. It removes self-interest from the equation. When others speak highly of you, it carries weight. When you speak highly of yourself, people discount it. Another benefit of demonstrating value is that it removes pressure. Self-advertisers constantly need feedback, likes, comments, praise, reassurance. They chase validation as a reward for their self-promotion. But when you demonstrate value silently, you detach from the need for applause. You focus on performance, not perception. And ironically, perception improves precisely because you stop trying to manage it. This shift from performance to embodiment is where silent attractiveness begins to solidify. An embodied person does not need to perform confidence. They live confidently. They don't need to perform intelligence. They think deeply. They don't need to perform kindness. They operate from kindness naturally. Embodiment makes performance unnecessary. Finally, demonstrating value creates longevity. Performers peak quickly and fade quickly. Advertisers generate noise, then disappear when attention shifts elsewhere. But those who quietly build, quietly train, quietly refine, and quietly execute become more valuable over time. Their reputation compounds, their presence deepens, their silence gains meaning. And when they do speak, when they do share, when they do reveal, it actually matters. Because people know the value was real long before it was spoken. In the end, silent attractiveness comes down to this: don't tell the world who you are. Prove it through how you move. People believe behavior. People trust results. People respect consistency. Demonstrate value, and the world will notice without you asking it to. Chapter 8. Earn respect through competence, not performance. Competence is one of the strongest forms of silent attractiveness because it creates respect without noise, demand, or self-promotion. When someone is genuinely good at what they do, whether it is their work, their craft, their communication, or their thinking, people feel it. Competence emits a quiet confidence that doesn't need to announce itself. It simply exists. It is visible through action, through execution, through consistency, and through results. Competence earns respect in a way that performance never can. Performance, on the other hand, tries to accelerate respect. It wants recognition now. It wants praise now. It wants validation now. Performance often involves exaggerated effort, attention-seeking, and validation-seeking behaviors, bragging, comparing, showing off, dramatizing accomplishments, or demanding acknowledgement. The problem with performance is that it tries to manufacture what competence naturally attracts. And manufactured respect rarely lasts, because it is built on perception rather than substance. There's a reason why people admire quiet professionals more than loud amateurs. The quiet professional doesn't need to convince anyone of anything. They let time and action speak. The loud amateur, however, tries to persuade others of their ability before it has been proven. Competence is attractive because it provides safety. It signals stability. It signals reliability. It signals that if pressure arrives, you will not collapse. People are drawn to those who can handle responsibility and deliver consistently. True competence is also deeply connected to identity. When someone is competent, they don't need to perform self-worth. They don't need to advertise their value. They don't need to chase validation. Their internal world is aligned with their external actions. Their confidence comes from doing, not from being seen doing. This distinction matters because so many people build their identity on performance rather than substance. When your identity relies on performance, you become fragile. You need the audience. You need the applause. You need the reassurance. Without it, you begin to crumble. Competence also commands authority without force. Authority built on competence feels earned. Authority built on performance feels imposed. People resist imposed authority because it demands compliance. They respect earned authority because it feels deserved. This is why competent people often become informal leaders, even when they don't hold formal titles. Others naturally defer to them, seek guidance from them, and trust their judgment. There is an important nuance here. Competence doesn't have to be exceptional to be attractive. It just has to be real. You don't need to be the best in the world. You just need to be good enough that people know they can rely on you. Reliability itself is rare, and rarity creates value. Competence also affects how you handle pressure. Performers often collapse under pressure because pressure exposes the difference between image and reality. Competent people, however, become more attractive under pressure because their competence becomes visible. Crises reveal character. Challenges reveal skill. Stress reveals whether someone has structure or chaos inside them. When someone navigates difficulty with order, clarity, and calm execution, admiration rises naturally. Another dimension of competence is improvement. Competent people are not static. They refine their craft. They study their field. They pay attention to detail. They iterate. They do not plateau because they do not rely on performance to carry them. They rely on growth. People who rely on performance often stagnate because their energy is spent maintaining an image rather than building real substance beneath it. Competence also communicates values. It shows discipline. It shows patience. It shows respect for time. It shows respect for craft. It shows respect for commitments. These values are attractive because they signal maturity. Maturity is attractive because it is stable, and stability is attractive because it makes people feel safe. Socially, competence also creates asymmetric admiration. A competent person may admire others, but they do not envy or resent them. They recognize skill in others without feeling diminished. Performers, however, often compare and compete. They need to win the attention. Competent people don't need to win. They need to grow, and growth always attracts more than competition. There is also the element of humility. Competent people don't need to inflate themselves. They don't need to prove their superiority. They don't need to dominate conversations. They don't need to be the center of the room. They are content allowing their competence to speak. Humility paired with competence is one of the strongest combinations in human interaction, because humility removes ego, while competence preserves respect. At the end of the day, competence creates a simple but powerful effect. It makes people trust you. They trust your decisions, your actions, your opinions, your presence. Trust is the foundation of all meaningful connection, personal, romantic, and professional. Without trust, attraction cannot root. Without trust, respect cannot solidify. Without trust, admiration cannot grow. This is why silent attractiveness prioritizes competence over performance. Competence builds real value. Performance seeks perceived value. Real value endures. Perceived value constantly needs renewal. Silent attractiveness is built on what lasts, and what lasts is always what is real. Chapter 9. Control the frame, not the people. Human interaction is rarely about the literal words being exchanged. It is about the invisible frame that shapes how those words are interpreted. The frame determines who leads and who follows, who reacts and who sets the tone, who holds value and who seeks it. Most people try to control people directly. They try to persuade, to convince, to impress, to argue, to demand. But silently attractive individuals don't control people, they control the frame. And the frame controls everything else. A frame is the underlying context of a situation. It answers questions like, who is leading this interaction? What is the purpose of this exchange? Who sets the emotional temperature? Who defines the pace? Who decides what matters and what doesn't? When you control the frame, you don't need to force outcomes, you simply shape the environment in which outcomes unfold. It's subtle, but deeply powerful. Consider the difference between someone who enters a conversation hoping to be liked versus someone who enters expecting mutual respect. The first person frames the interaction around approval seeking. The second frames it around equality. Without a word, the dynamic is already different. The approval seeker unconsciously signals lower status because they are reacting to the potential judgment of others. The person expecting respect signals higher status because they treat respect as a baseline assumption. Silent attractiveness always operates from the latter position. Frame control also shows up through calmness. When others become emotional, reactive, or stressed, the person who maintains composure becomes the anchor of the interaction. They don't get pulled into the turbulence. They don't match the chaos. They let the other person exhaust their emotional energy, and then they guide the situation back to stability. This is social leadership, not through domination, but through regulation. And people instinctively trust those who can regulate an environment. Controlling the frame is also about not overreacting to tests. Every social environment contains small tests, moments designed to reveal whether you are easy to unsettle. Someone might make a provocative joke, interrupt you, question something you said, or ignore a comment. The average person responds defensively, trying to reassert control through explanation or confrontation. The silently attractive person, however, doesn't take the bait. They don't collapse into insecurity or escalate into aggression. They hold the frame, and holding the frame communicates that you don't need to fight for respect. You already have it. Another dimension of frame control involves reframing. For example, if someone asks a question that implies lower status, do you really think you can do that? Many people feel compelled to justify themselves. The competent person, however, reframes effortlessly. Of course. Why not? Now the question is reversed, and the burden shifts. Instead of defending their capability, they make the other person defend their doubt. The frame has changed without argument or hostility. Frame control also shows up in pacing. The person who controls time controls the frame. When you rush to respond, rush to clarify, rush to answer, you signal that the other person has the frame. They're setting the tempo, and you're adjusting. But when you respond slowly, when you consider your words, when you pause before replying, you take back the tempo. You communicate that you operate on your own timing, not theirs. And timing is power in social dynamics. The silently attractive person also knows how to reject frames that don't serve them. When someone tries to lure you into a frame of competition, insecurity, or justification, you don't participate. If someone says, "Explain why you think that," you're not required to. You can simply say, "I prefer it that way," or "It works for me," or "I like it." When someone says, "Why are you so quiet?" you don't need to explain yourself. You can respond, "I speak when I have something to say." No justification, no apology, just a different frame. Trying to control people directly creates resistance. Trying to control people indirectly through the frame creates alignment. People don't mind following someone who doesn't force them. They mind following someone who tries to dominate them. Silent attractiveness is never about domination. It is about shaping the environment so that your presence is the natural point of orientation. Controlling the frame also makes you less reactive. Reactive people lose power because they allow others to steer their emotions. When you react immediately, you are not choosing, you are responding. The person you're responding to controls the situation. But when you respond selectively, thoughtfully, or with restraint, you take control back. Restraint is a form of quiet dominance that doesn't need aggression. Ultimately, frame control is about self-possession. When you possess yourself, you don't need to control others. People are drawn to those who are grounded within themselves. They trust them, they respect them, they gravitate toward them. Control yourself, and you influence the room. Try to control the room, and you lose control of yourself. Silent attractiveness chooses the first path, always. Chapter 10. Master Social Timing and Calibration. Silent attractiveness depends as much on when you act as on how you act. Social timing is the art of picking the right moment to speak, to reveal, to ask, to withdraw, to escalate, or to slow down. Calibration is the ability to adjust your behavior based on the emotional climate around you. Most people struggle not because they lack intelligence, charm, or good intentions, but because they misread timing and miscalibrate their behavior. They speak too early, reveal too much too soon, escalate too fast, or withdraw too abruptly. They don't listen for context, they don't study the energy of the room, and they don't adapt. Silent attractiveness thrives on the opposite approach. When you have strong social timing, you don't rush interactions, you allow conversations to breathe, you allow curiosity to build, you allow silence to play its role. You don't hurry intimacy, and you don't force closeness. You pace relationships, professional, social, romantic, in a way that feels natural rather than pressured. Pressure kills attraction. Timing nourishes it. Pressure makes people defensive. Timing makes people receptive. Calibration begins with observation. Before you contribute in a social setting, observe who is leading, who is disengaged, who is competing, who is nervous, who is confident, who is performing, who is comfortable. When you observe first, you gain a map of the room, and with a map your behavior becomes strategic instead of random. You don't stumble into dynamics, you choose your role within them. A calibrated person listens more than they speak at the beginning of interactions. They are not eager to showcase themselves, they are curious about the environment. That curiosity creates accuracy, and accuracy makes people feel seen, not analyzed. Most individuals feel misunderstood on a daily basis, so when someone arrives with accurate social calibration, they feel an immediate sense of relief and attraction. Timing is also about escalation, whether it's sharing personal stories, expressing interest, asking deeper questions, or discussing ideas. Escalation works best when it's earned. The person with weak timing escalates too quickly. They skip the necessary stages of rapport. They reveal vulnerabilities before trust exists. They try to be memorable before being grounded. They try to connect before understanding. The result is awkwardness and discomfort. The person with strong timing escalates gradually. They add depth one layer at a time. A surface question becomes a thoughtful question. A comment becomes a story becomes an insight. Insight becomes vulnerability. Vulnerability becomes trust. Trust becomes connection. The pacing is what makes it feel safe rather than overwhelming. Calibration also applies to humor. People with poor timing use humor to fill silence, to impress, or to distract. Their jokes often land poorly because they were not calibrated to the emotional state of the listener. Humor that doesn't match context feels forced. Humor that matches context feels effortless. Silent attractiveness doesn't rely on jokes. It relies on presence. If humor appears, it appears as a byproduct of attunement, not desperation. Then there is the matter of emotional mirroring. Good calibration is not mimicry, it's alignment. It's reading tension and deciding whether to diffuse it or let it exist. It's noticing enthusiasm and deciding whether to match it or slow it down. It's sensing uncertainty and deciding whether to reassure or redirect. These decisions determine how others feel in your presence, and people always remember how you made them feel. Another major mistake of poor timing is over-pursuit. When someone tries too hard to accelerate closeness, they create imbalance. They lean in too far too soon. They text too often. They ask for too much. They reveal too quickly. They demand certainty. They don't allow the other person room to come toward them. That one-sided pursuit destroys curiosity. Curiosity dies the moment there is no room left to move. Silent attractiveness always leaves room. It allows the other person the opportunity to step closer. And when someone chooses to step closer, the connection becomes stronger than any forced pursuit. Calibration also requires awareness of intensity. Some situations call for warmth, others call for seriousness, others call for humor, others call for neutrality. The socially calibrated person knows how to dial their intensity up or down without losing themselves. The uncalibrated person stays stuck at one intensity, always enthusiastic, always sarcastic, always serious, always emotional, always detached. Extremes rarely attract, balance does. Perhaps the most underrated aspect of timing is knowing when to stop. Knowing when to stop talking, knowing when to stop revealing, knowing when to stop asking. Ending conversations on a high note often creates more attraction than dragging them until energy drains. The best interactions leave people wanting more, not wishing they had less. That is the essence of pacing. Finish while interest is rising, not falling. Ultimately, mastering social timing and calibration is about awareness. Awareness of yourself, awareness of others, and awareness of context. When you can read a room, read a person, and read a moment, you no longer need to force anything. You move effortlessly, you connect naturally, you attract silently, and silent attraction is always stronger than loud persuasion. Chapter 11. Make people feel understood and significant. If there is one psychological truth that explains a large portion of human behavior, it is this: people crave to feel understood, and they crave to feel significant. Not admired, not entertained, not impressed, understood and significant. Silent attractiveness taps into this craving more effectively than almost anything else, because it shifts the focus away from performance and toward connection. When someone feels understood in your presence, they begin to associate safety with you. When someone feels significant around you, they begin to associate value with you. The combination of safety and value creates powerful attraction, not just romantic attraction, but social, professional, and interpersonal attraction as well. Making people feel understood does not require brilliant insight or complicated techniques. It requires curiosity instead of ego. It requires presence instead of distraction. It requires listening rather than waiting to talk. Most conversations are not truly conversations. They are alternating monologues. One person speaks, the other waits impatiently for their turn. Both are talking. Neither is understanding. The silently attractive person breaks this pattern. They give genuine attention. They let the other person express without rushing to top the story, redirect the topic, or insert themselves. Their listening is not passive, it's attuned. Being attuned means noticing not just what is said, but how it is said. Tone reveals emotion. Pace reveals tension. Word choice reveals values. Facial expression reveals internal conflict. When you notice these elements and reflect them gently, that sounds like it was important to you, or it seems like that situation demanded a lot from you. You signal that you actually heard the person, not just their words but their meaning. Meaning is what people are desperate to have recognized. Significance, however, goes deeper than understanding. Understanding says, I hear you. Significance says, you matter. Significance is offered through respect. Respect for people's experiences, respect for their time, respect for their effort, and respect for their identity. Many individuals in the modern environment are starved of significance because most interactions are shallow. Digital connection has replaced relational depth. People scroll more than they speak. They announce more than they confide. They perform more than they reveal. So when someone comes along who listens without competing, asks without prying, and pays attention without judgment, it feels rare. Rarity is attractive. To make someone feel significant, you don't need to flatter them or inflate their ego. Flattery often feels transactional. Significance is created through recognition. Recognition says, "I see the human part of you." It can be as simple as acknowledging effort, appreciating uniqueness, or noticing growth. Even something small like, "You're really thoughtful about the way you make decisions," can land deeper than an entire speech about how talented someone is, because it highlights something intrinsic rather than something performative. This kind of social presence also reduces competition. In many environments, people are subtly competing for attention, approval, or dominance. They perform intelligence. They debate aggressively. They interrupt to control conversation. They try to impress. But when someone arrives who is not competing, who is instead providing understanding and significance, the dynamic changes. Competition dies. Vulnerability increases. Comfort rises. And comfort is a much stronger attractor than dominance. People may admire those who dominate, but they are drawn to those who make them feel at ease. Silent attractiveness does not demand reciprocity. It does not say, "I listened, now you must listen to me." It allows reciprocity to emerge naturally. When someone feels understood and significant, they will want to understand you. They will ask more questions. They will invest more attention. They will move closer. But the movement must be voluntary. Forced reciprocity creates compliance. Voluntary reciprocity creates attraction. There is also a strategic dimension here. By understanding others, before revealing yourself, you gain information without exposing weakness. This is not manipulation. It is intelligent pacing. Most misunderstandings, relational failures, and awkward social dynamics come from premature self-disclosure. When you reveal too early, you gamble. When you understand first, you calibrate. Calibration is power. To make others feel understood and significant, you must also eliminate one of the biggest conversational toxins: self-centering. Self-centering is the habit of redirecting everything back to yourself. Someone shares a struggle, you share yours. Someone talks about their accomplishment, you one-up it. Someone expresses worry, you shift the topic. You aren't trying to harm anyone, your ego simply wants to participate. But silent attractiveness restrains ego long enough to create space for the other person to exist fully. Space is a gift. Most people rarely receive it. In the end, making others feel understood and significant is less about technique and more about mindset. The mindset says, "I don't need to prove myself to be valuable here. I have nothing to win and nothing to lose." This moment is not about performance. When that mindset takes root, people begin to relax around you. They begin to open up. They begin to reveal. And once people reveal themselves, they bond. Because bonding is not created by impressing people, it's created by allowing people to be seen. And when someone feels seen, the attraction doesn't need to be loud. It becomes inevitable. Chapter 12. Use strategic withdrawal to increase your value. One of the most quietly powerful moves in social dynamics is not pursuit, it's withdrawal. Not withdrawal out of fear or insecurity, but withdrawal as a deliberate signal of value, self-respect, and abundance. Strategic withdrawal tells the world, without a word, that you do not chase validation, you do not beg for attention, and you do not remain where you are not valued. When done correctly, withdrawal increases curiosity, respect, and even desire, not because you manipulated anyone, but because you refused to abandon yourself. To understand why strategic withdrawal works, you must understand how attention operates. Humans assign greater value to what is scarce and less value to what is abundant. This is true in economics, relationships, status, and social psychology. What is always available becomes taken for granted. What withdraws becomes desired. What pauses becomes awaited. What is selective becomes respected. When you withdraw, you create psychological space, and space gives others the opportunity to move toward you. Most people make the mistake of over-pursuit. They text too quickly, ask too many questions, reveal too much interest, offer too much energy, and try too hard to maintain momentum. Their assumption is that if they don't keep feeding the interaction, it will die. But interactions don't die because of reduced effort. They die because of unbalanced effort. When one person pursues too much, the other person subconsciously reduces their own. This is not personal. It's a calibration mechanism. Humans seek equilibrium. When one side leans in too far, the other must lean back to restore balance. Strategic withdrawal flips that dynamic. When you reduce effort, not abruptly, but naturally, the other person now has a space to step into. They can text first. They can ask questions. They can propose plans. They can show curiosity. If they don't, then the relationship was never balanced to begin with, and withdrawal simply reveals the truth earlier. In this sense, withdrawal protects you. It prevents you from investing endlessly into someone or something that will not reciprocate. Withdrawal is also an assertion of standards. When you withdraw from disrespect, inconsistency, passive aggression, superficial interactions, or low-effort engagement, you send a clear message. I do not remain where I am devalued. You don't need to argue. You don't need to lecture. You don't need to threaten. You simply exit. And exiting is louder than any speech you could have made. People learn how to treat you not by what you say, but by what you walk away from. However, withdrawal is not punishment. Punishment is designed to manipulate or coerce. Strategic withdrawal is designed to protect your dignity and restore healthy balance. If your intention is to create guilt, fear, or insecurity, that is manipulation. If your intention is to remove yourself from a situation misaligned with your standards, that is strength. Silent attractiveness never needs manipulation because it operates from abundance rather than scarcity. There is also a timing aspect to withdrawal. You do not withdraw at the peak of connection or mutual interest that would signal insecurity. You withdraw when the energy becomes one-sided, when reciprocity drops, when tension becomes forced, or when the other person assumes your effort is guaranteed. You withdraw not because you are done, but because you are intelligent enough to let space do what force cannot. Space invites reflection. Reflection invites realization. Realization invites pursuit. Think of how many relationships, romantic, social, or professional, only began to change once space was introduced. People often don't recognize value until they experience absence. They don't recognize consistency until it pauses. They don't recognize warmth until it cools. They don't recognize presence until it is no longer guaranteed. Withdrawal activates awareness. Awareness activates appreciation. Strategic withdrawal also has an important internal function. It grounds you in self-sufficiency. When you are capable of pulling your attention back, redirecting your energy toward your own life, investing in your own pursuits, and filling your own time, you stop needing others to complete you. That independence is extremely attractive because it removes pressure from relationships. People enjoy those who want them, but do not need them. Neediness creates burden. Independence creates freedom. But withdrawal must be paired with consistency in other areas of life. If you withdraw socially, but collapse emotionally, isolate, ruminate, or catastrophize, that is not strategic. it is avoidance. Strategic withdrawal is purposeful. It reallocates energy toward growth, not toward retreat. You continue living, you continue improving, you continue engaging with the world. You do not freeze your life waiting for others to notice. You move forward, and moving forward is what makes withdrawal powerful rather than passive. The truth is, silence and absence carry messages that words rarely can. Words can be debated, words can be argued, words can be ignored. Silence cannot, absence cannot. Withholding energy, attention and presence changes dynamics far more than declarations ever will. People feel withdrawal, they sense it, and sensing it forces them to respond, either by moving toward you or letting the connection end. Either outcome serves you, because clarity is better than ambiguity. In the end, strategic withdrawal is a declaration of value. It says, I choose environments where I am met. When you operate from that principle, you attract those who can meet you and filter out those who cannot. And nothing builds silent attractiveness more consistently than being willing to walk away from what does not see you, in order to make space for what will. Chapter 13. Build a compelling personal aesthetic. Silent attractiveness is not only psychological and behavioral, it is also aesthetic. Before you speak, before you reveal personality, before you demonstrate competence, people experience you visually, not in a superficial way, but in a perceptual way. Humans are constantly scanning for signals, signals of care, signals of discipline, signals of taste, signals of identity, signals of social awareness. A compelling personal aesthetic does not mean being flashy or fashionable. It means being intentional. It means crafting an external presence that reflects internal order. Think of personal aesthetic as the visual counterpart to social intelligence. It is the set of non-verbal elements that communicate who you are before anyone has the chance to ask. Clothing, grooming, posture, movement, scent, spatial awareness, these are all components. You don't need to excel in all of them, you just need to avoid neglecting them. Neglect is loud. Neglect signals a lack of self-respect or a lack of self-awareness. Silent attractiveness cannot coexist with neglect, because neglect contradicts intention. Clothing is the most obvious element of aesthetic, but also the most misunderstood. A compelling aesthetic is not about expensive brands, trendy pieces, or maximal effort. It is about fit, coherence, and simplicity. Fit is the primary determinant of whether clothing enhances or diminishes you. Well-fitted, clean, simple clothing signals care and self-respect. Baggy, sloppy, or chaotic clothing signals disregard. Discovering your aesthetic doesn't mean copying others. It means noticing what aligns with your build, your energy, and your lifestyle, and eliminating what doesn't. Color also matters. People often underestimate how color influences perception. Darker tones communicate seriousness, formality, and precision. Softer tones communicate warmth, approachability, and lightness. Bold tones communicate confidence, but only if used sparingly. Too much boldness signals insecurity, disguised as expression. A compelling aesthetic uses color with intention, not as decoration. Posture dramatically influences silent attractiveness. Posture is the body's statement about how comfortable you are in your own existence. Upright posture with relaxed shoulders communicates openness and groundedness. Slouched posture communicates defensiveness or disengagement. Rigid posture communicates anxiety. The goal is not military stiffness, but relaxed alignment. Alignment says, I am not collapsing under the weight of the environment. When you carry yourself with alignment, you move differently, and movement is part of aesthetic. Movement tells others how much control you have over yourself. Fast, frantic, jittery movement signals anxiety or insecurity. Slow, deliberate movement signals composure. People unconsciously trust and admire those who move with deliberation, because deliberate movement suggests clarity and agency. You don't have to choreograph your gestures, you simply have to be aware of pace. When you slow your pace, you slow the room. Slowing the room is an advanced social move, and a powerful one. Scent is another element people rarely discuss but instantly notice. A subtle, clean, well-chosen scent elevates presence without saying a word. Overly strong or aggressive scents, however, push people away. Silent attractiveness aims to draw people closer, not repel them. Scent is a form of proximity signal. If someone needs to stand close to detect it, it performs its function well. Your environment is also part of your aesthetic. The spaces you occupy say as much about you as your clothing does. A clean, organized personal space communicates order and self-respect. A chaotic or neglected space communicates internal disarray. You do not need luxury to have aesthetic, you need intention. A small, simple living environment can be deeply attractive if it is curated with care. Order is attractive because it signals control. Control is attractive because it signals stability. Minimalism often enhances silent attractiveness because minimalism removes noise. When you reduce noise, visual, verbal, social, you increase signal. The signal becomes you. Quiet confidence, intention, presence. People often hide behind noise because they fear their signal isn't strong enough. But the silently attractive person reduces noise precisely because their signal is strong. Aesthetic is also about editing. Editing means removing elements that dilute your presence. It may be removing clothing that doesn't fit, habits that make you appear scattered, speech patterns that make you sound uncertain, or accessories that make you look like you're trying too hard. Trying too hard is always visible, and visible effort kills silent attractiveness. Effort should exist, but it should be invisible. Invisible effort reads as natural ability. Visible effort reads as insecurity. Another critical part of aesthetic is congruence. Congruence means that your external presentation matches your internal identity. When the outside and the inside conflict, people feel it. They may not articulate it, but they feel something off. Congruence eliminates that discomfort. If you are serious internally, your aesthetic should not be clownish or chaotic. If you are creative internally, your aesthetic should not be sterile or generic. When you match outer form with inner essence, you become coherent. Coherence is rare. Coherence is attractive. A compelling personal aesthetic does not require beauty. It does not require perfection. It requires intention, coherence, care, and curation. Silent attractiveness thrives on these qualities because they signal that you are not living life on accident. You are living it with awareness, and awareness in a world obsessed with reactive chaos is quietly magnetic. Chapter 14. Become the calm in the room. Every social environment has a certain emotional temperature. Sometimes it is warm and relaxed, sometimes tense and competitive, sometimes anxious and chaotic. Most people mirror the temperature around them. They absorb the stress, adopt the urgency, match the energy, and allow the room to dictate their internal state. The silently attractive person operates the opposite way. They don't take temperature, they set it. They become the calm in the room. And nothing draws attention more quietly than the person who stays composed while everyone else is reacting. Calm is powerful because calm is rare. Most people are in a near constant state of stimulation. Notifications attack their attention, deadlines chase them, uncertainty stresses them, and they carry that tension into social interactions. When someone enters a space with grounded energy, slow breathing, relaxed posture, controlled pace, deliberate speech, they create contrast. Humans notice contrast instinctively. The calm person stands out without trying. Becoming the calm in the room is not about suppressing emotion. Suppression is brittle, It hides tension rather than dissolving it. Calm is spacious. Calm is intentional. Calm is self-possessed. It emerges from the belief that you are capable of handling whatever is happening without losing yourself. This belief communicates strength, and strength, when expressed without aggression, attracts trust. One of the reasons calm is so magnetic is that calm communicates certainty. Certainty is one of the deepest psychological needs humans have. When we encounter someone who is certain, not arrogant, not loud but quietly sure, we find ourselves drawn toward them. We relax around them. We subconsciously assign them leadership. The person who is calm in uncertainty becomes the person others look to for cues. Calm is also deeply connected to presence. Presence means you are here, in the moment, not mentally racing ahead or catastrophizing future outcomes. When you are present, you listen differently, you observe differently, you make decisions differently. You do not rush. Rushing is a form of fear, fear of being misunderstood, fear of missing out, fear of not keeping up. Calm removes fear from performance. You move slowly enough to choose instead of react. In times of stress, the calm person becomes disproportionately attractive because they offer emotional safety. Emotional safety is not sentimental, it is functional. Humans do not want to attach themselves socially or romantically to people who magnify chaos. They attach themselves to those who stabilize it. When the room heats up, when conversations intensify, when tempers rise, the person who can lower the temperature gains influence without raising their voice. To become the calm in the room, you must first control your breath. Breath is the remote control for the nervous system. Short, shallow breathing creates anxiety and impulsiveness. Slow, deep breathing creates clarity and patience. When your breath slows, your thoughts slow. When your thoughts slow, your reactions slow. When your reactions slow, your awareness expands. Awareness is the foundation of calm. Another part of calm is detachment from immediate outcomes. When you are overly attached to winning, convincing, impressing, or being right, you become tense. Tension leaks through body language, speech, micro-expressions and posture. Calm people don't need every outcome to favor them. They don't interpret social interactions as battles to be won. They treat interactions as exchanges. Exchanges don't require victory, they require participation. The calm person also understands the value of silence. When someone directs tension at them, through criticism, provocation, or emotional volatility, they don't immediately fill the space with justification or defensive speech. They allow silence to breathe. Silence forces the other person to witness their own intensity. This does something fascinating. It causes escalation to burn out quickly. Most provocations need fuel to survive. Calm refuses to provide fuel. Calm also influences how you speak. Calm speech isn't just slow, it is measured. It carries weight because it isn't rushed. When you speak calmly, you imply that time is on your side. Rushed speech implies urgency, and urgency implies lower status. Calm speech implies that you are not competing for attention or approval. You are simply contributing. People listen more closely to those who don't sound desperate to be heard. Another important aspect is emotional self-regulation. Everyone experiences frustration, stress, embarrassment, and discomfort. The difference is that calm individuals do not broadcast these states impulsively. They process internally and act intentionally. This doesn't mean they avoid conflict. It means they choose when and how to engage. Conflict chosen is powerful. Conflict reacted to is weak. Becoming the calm in the room also requires confidence in your own pace. Many people are socially rushed, not because others rush them, but because they rush themselves. They feel the need to keep up with others' speed, others' excitement, others' mood, others' expectations. But when you set your own pace, you signal autonomy. Autonomy is attractive because it implies strength. People want to join those who set pace, not those who chase it. Ultimately, calm is a form of social leadership. True leadership is not about controlling others. It is about controlling yourself in a way that influences others. When you become the anchor, others orient themselves to you. When you become the low-frequency tone in a noisy environment, others tune down to match you. When you become the stability in a volatile moment, others follow your emotional direction without being told to. Silent attractiveness is largely the art of becoming someone others want to be near, not because of what you say, but because of who you are when the room starts shaking. Calm is the form of value people didn't know they needed until they experience it, and once they do, they rarely forget it. Chapter 15. Reinvent yourself through social intelligence. Silent attractiveness is not a static trait. It is not something you achieve once and then keep forever. It is a living expression of who you are becoming. Reinvention is the process that keeps your presence fresh, relevant, and compelling over time. Without reinvention, people become predictable, stagnant, and easy to categorize. And once you are fully categorized, you stop being interesting. Humans are drawn to growth. We admire those who evolve. We pay attention to those who break their own patterns and expand beyond their previous identity. Reinvention creates curiosity, and curiosity fuels attraction. Reinvention does not require starting over. It does not require abandoning your past or rejecting your previous self. It means updating your identity, behaviors, beliefs, skills, aesthetic, mindset, boundaries, and social strategy, so they match who you are becoming, rather than who you used to be. The tragedy is that many people remain loyal to their old identity long after it has stopped serving them. They remain loyal to habits that once protected them, but now limit them. They remain loyal to relationships that once fit their situation, but now shrink their growth. They remain loyal to stories about themselves that were never true, but became familiar. Reinvention asks a harder question. Who would I become if I stopped being loyal to my limitations? Silent attractiveness accelerates through reinvention, because reinvention expands your layers. The more layers you have, the harder you are to summarize. And the harder you are to summarize, the more compelling you become. People are magnetized by individuals who contain depth, but don't display it all at once. Reinvention is how you keep adding depth. You learn a new skill, you refine your appearance. You cultivate discipline, you upgrade your social awareness. You build new competencies, you restructure your standards. Through small changes over time, you become a person who surprises people, not in a flashy way, but in a quietly impressive way. There is also a social advantage to reinvention. It disrupts old expectations. Most people interact with you based on outdated assumptions. They assume you think the same way, live the same way, believe the same things, and value the same priorities. Reinvention breaks these assumptions. It forces people to reevaluate you. And reevaluation is a powerful psychological mechanism because it resets the dynamics of attention. When someone must update their perception of you, they must pay attention. Attention is one of the strongest social currencies you can command. Reinvention is also the antidote to social stagnation. Stagnation is what makes people predictable. Predictable people are easy to ignore. When your life becomes an endless repetition of the same thoughts, same actions, same habits, and same environment, you become invisible. Not because you lack value, but because nothing changes. Reinvention creates motion, and motion draws the eye. Growth makes people ask, what's happening there? And the moment people begin wondering about you, silent attraction is already working. However, reinvention must be intentional. Reinvention for the sake of novelty leads to fragmentation, spreading yourself thin, hopping between identities, chasing trends, abandoning your center. Reinvention done correctly deepens your identity rather than scattering it. You become more defined, not less. You become more coherent, not more chaotic. Reinvention is not about being different from others. It is about becoming different from your past self. To reinvent effectively, start by auditing your identity. Ask yourself, what part of my life feels outdated? It could be a belief about who you are. I'm shy. I'm not a leader. I'm just average. Or a behavior you've outgrown. Or a habit that drains you. Or a presentation that doesn't match your potential. Reinvention begins at the point of discomfort, the moment you realize that something about you no longer fits the life you are trying to build. Next, edit. Editing means removing what no longer aligns. This is the hardest part for most people, because removal often feels like loss. But removal creates space. No new identity can form in a life crowded with old patterns. This might mean stepping back from social groups that keep you small, eliminating distractions that numb you, or leaving environments that no longer challenge you. Reinvention is not just addition, it is subtraction. Once space is created, you add deliberately. Add skills that enhance your competence. Add habits that strengthen your discipline. Add relationships that sharpen your mind. Add routines that improve your health. Add aesthetics that reflect intention. Add challenges that stretch your capabilities. Growth is attractive because it signals upward trajectory. People want to be around those who are going somewhere, not those who are stuck. Reinvention also influences how others treat you. When you upgrade your standards, others must either rise to meet them or fall away. Both outcomes benefit you. Those who rise become aligned. Those who fall create room for better. Silent attractiveness thrives in environments where reciprocity exists, not where you carry the entire relational weight. Most importantly, reinvention is not for spectators. It is for you. If you reinvent yourself to impress, to prove, or to spite others, the transformation will be hollow. But if you reinvent to expand, to evolve, and to live more fully, the transformation becomes magnetic. People can feel when change is authentic, because authentic change produces coherence, and coherence produces presence. Silent attractiveness is not about becoming someone louder. It is about becoming someone deeper. Reinvention is the path to depth, and depth is the path to becoming unforgettable, not because you demand attention, but because you become the kind of person who draws it without trying. Conclusion. Silent attractiveness is not about perfection, performance, or chasing admiration. It is about building a way of being that makes others pay attention without you asking them to. Throughout this audiobook, we explored how social intelligence becomes a quiet but powerful form of magnetism, one that doesn't depend on looks, noise, or status signaling, but on how you carry yourself, how you engage with others, and how you manage your inner world. In a culture obsessed with visibility, the most compelling individuals are often the ones who are not trying to be seen. They are not scrambling for attention, not broadcasting their accomplishments, not adjusting themselves for every room they enter. Instead, they move with composure. They speak with precision. They listen with curiosity. They express boundaries without hostility. They exit spaces that don't respect them. They don't need to convince anyone of their worth, because worth becomes obvious in how they operate. Silent attractiveness also reflects a deeper kind of maturity. It asks you to develop emotional gravity instead of emotional volatility. It asks you to pursue competence instead of performance. It asks you to regulate yourself instead of trying to regulate others. It asks you to become someone whose presence brings clarity rather than confusion, calm rather than chaos, depth rather than distraction. What makes this approach to attraction so powerful is that it shifts the locus of control inward. You do not need to wait for approval from others to begin embodying value. You don't need the right audience, the right partner, the right opportunity, or the right validation. Silent attractiveness begins with self-respect, and self-respect does not require permission. You can start treating your time, attention, presence, and standards as valuable today. When you do, the world eventually adjusts. And perhaps the most important shift silent attractiveness creates is the shift from seeking to selecting. Most people seeking attention, seeking validation, seeking closeness, seeking recognition. But silently attractive people select. They choose where to invest, whom to allow closer, what environments to remain in, and which dynamics to disengage from. Selection is a form of power, and power is attractive, not because it dominates, but because it does not need to. Silent attractiveness also extends beyond social dynamics. It has implications for career, leadership, friendship, and even self-development. In professional environments, it helps you command respect through competence, results, and presence rather than noise. In relationships, it creates stability and depth. In identity, it creates confidence rooted in internal coherence instead of external performance. It is a style of living that scales across every dimension of life, because it is fundamentally about how you relate to yourself. The final layer of silent attractiveness is reinvention. Reinvention keeps you interesting, not in a performative way, but in a developmental way. People are drawn to those who grow, who evolve, who shed outdated versions of themselves, who refuse stagnation, who remain students of life. Growth creates depth, and depth creates magnetism. If there is one message to carry forward, it is this: silent attractiveness is not something you chase. It is something you become. You become it through self-respect, competence, calibration, composure, presence, restraint, boundaries, curiosity, and refinement. You become it through what you stop doing, just as much as through what you start doing. You become it by withdrawing where you are undervalued and investing where reciprocity exists. You become it by no longer abandoning yourself in exchange for approval. In a world that teaches you to be louder, more visible, more impressive, silent attractiveness offers a different path, one grounded in dignity, maturity, and intelligence. It is a reminder that the strongest form of attraction is not the one that demands attention, but the one that earns it effortlessly. And once you understand that, the way you move through the world will never be the same.